The subject of today's 1 year podiversary episode is a device that is synonymous with the word torture. Being the most feared single object in pretty much all of Europe for 3 centuries and a mainstay of the infamous Tower of London, this device was used almost every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, on multiple victims for everything from attempted regicide, treason, heresy, and even just plain old interrogations. With as many variations as there were countries that used it, we'll go all the way back to ancient Greece and up to 18th century Russia to show you just how horrifying some wood, rope, and gears can be. From Protestant to Catholic, soldier to saint, no one was safe from what was once called the Duke of Exeter's daughter. Today we cover the rack. I'm Kevin Young.
And I'm Dan. Hey, you behind the bushes, Harrigan?
And this is torture. Is that a Halloween reference?
No, it's Simpsons references. Mo is...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking of that. You said, hey there behind the bushes, and I just thought Mike Myers hiding behind, stalking Jamie Lee Curtis. Well. So before we get started, a quick call to action. For our 1 year anniversary, we would absolutely love it if you go rate and review on Apple or Good Pods or wherever else you're able to. We haven't gotten a whole bunch of reviews and ratings over the past year. We'd really like to bump that up. It'd really help us get seen more, because that's really what, sites like that base what you hear off of is ratings and reviews. It's not the greatest system, but it's a system we have to work with. So, but if you go do that, that'd be great.
Happy birthday, Kevin.
Happy birthday, Dan. Happy anniversary. Actually got you some roses.
Oh, yeah.
Take you out to dinner later.
Oh, yeah. Just skip straight to dessert, baby. Oh, yes. Sweet, sweet torture dessert. Give me a poached pear of anguish.
Nice.
Yeah, that was pretty good segue.
I would like to have dinner, so I'll have the rack.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boom. Got it. Kapow. All right. So I know a lot of you have wondered when we are finally going to cover this one. But I think for a podcast about torture, the rack is kind of like low-hanging fruit. Obviously, we have to cover it at some point, but I didn't want to jump right into it off the bat.
That's what I call my testicles.
We waited a year. Yeah. I mean, it's like if you had a podcast about cars, the very first one you want to talk about is like the Mustang or something. I mean, build up to something like that. Having a guitar podcast or something, and the first thing you want to talk about is a fucking Fender. You build up to something like that. Cover the lesser known ones, to get people interested in it, and then boom, you do the big series or the big episode on something. Which this will be. This will be a heftier episode than the last one. And we got a bunch of shit to get to, and a bunch of stories and info. So,
sweet. Strap in,
buckle up,
so to speak.
Buckle up. So, Dan, let's take you back to your favorite place in the world, medieval England.
Yeah.
Anytime I say medieval England, Dan perks up a little bit, thinking, ooh, what horrible thing is going to happen today? So specifically 1557 or so. And you are a follower of Martin Luther and are a proclaimed Protestant.
Never speak those words again.
just hypothetically for the story. life. Every time I type out something like that, I'm like, he is going to hate this.
Why do I hang around with this guy? God damn it.
It's like whenever you and I do visit one another, I come to Ireland and we're just walking around and be like, anybody want to meet my Catholic friend?
Yeah. He loves our Protestants. Loves them.
Just him throwing rocks at me, telling me to shut up. So, unfortunately for you, being a proclaimed Protestant, this just so happens to be during the 5-year reign of one of history's most infamous monsters, Queen Mary I, or Bloody Mary. Now, for those of you that don't know much about Queen Mary, she was a staunch Catholic that believed in returning England to the Catholic Church was one of, if not the most important issue facing the country at the time. And anyone that stood against her, well, they ended up where you are now, Dan. And where you are is the just as infamous Tower of London.
Ooh. I have actually been there as well, so I can picture it now.
Yeah?
So, yeah.
Do you get to take a tour? Do they have like all the stuff? I know there's supposed to be like a museum or something.
Yeah, so there's a tour that you can do, and they have like all like wax figures set up in cells to mimic stuff happening. Something like
sure.
I think we talked about it during the rats episode. Where and there's a yoke like of rats sitting there. If I remember correctly, now I could be thinking of the wrong thing because I did a couple of tours when I was there, where one of them was like another horror tour, and it was like you went through. The whole thing was that it was like on a rail cart thing that you sit on.
Okay.
And it brings you through like streets and brings you through as if like you're somebody being tried, and then you end up being sent into the tower. Like, so you go through a trial, and then you go into the tower or something. If I remember correctly, it was really cool. It's really good, from what I remember. Anyway,
yeah, it's one of the places on the bucket list to hit up at some point. When the wife and I have no kids in the house to worry about, and we can actually save a buck to go do something.
Yeah, anything
instead of having to entertain myself by making podcasts. I have no money. What am I going to do for entertainment? I'll make a podcast, like every other white guy in his 30s.
Spend money on said podcast. Like, it's like, yeah, I was in the exact same boat, and it's like, what am I going to do? Yeah, do a D&D podcast. What am I going to do? Spend hundreds on D&D stuff, and then... Yep. Y'all know how that turned out.
So, a man in robes with 2 underlings by his side bring you into a room with a variety of torture devices. But the most ominous one that takes up the middle of the room is a type of wooden bed with gears and chains attached to the head and the foot. You are presented with the rack.
You're presented with the guy from 50 Shades of Grey.
I mean,
what?
I've had this discussion before, and it's if the guy from 50 Shades of Grey was poor and old and ugly, it would just be kidnapping and rape. It would be a horror book, a horror movie. But because he's young and good looking and rich, it's every woman's fantasy. I don't fucking get it.
I'd just be expecting to be walking into that room and getting all excited and be all like, my tastes are very singular. It's like, yes, very particular taste.
It's remember Bill Murray from Little Shop of Horrors, where Steve Martin's doing everything he can to torture him, and he's just like, thank you.
Yeah.
You just walk into the Tower of London, and you see all these torture devices, and you just start hopping up and down. He's so happy.
Cracking out a couple of beers.
Let me get a hit of
Let's get this done.
Let me get a hit of that nitrous before we go at it. Oh, fuck. So you are asked where more of your Protestant friends are. Where are their hideouts? Where do they meet? Will you reject the teachings of Martin Luther and return to the Catholic Church? All that
Never.
kind of shit. No. Fuck it. You give them nothing, so they force you onto the rack. Your arms are tied to the sets of chains at the head of the wooden bed, and your ankles are tied to the chains at the foot. And they start to retch back on the gears, retracting the chains or rope, pulling your limbs tight, and you are asked the question again. And again, you say nothing. Anybody can hold off for, a little bit, because it's like, it's not going to be too painful. So the gears are turned some more, and you begin to feel tearing in your skin on your wrists and ankles. Pressure builds at your joints, wrists, your elbows, shoulders, ankles, knees, hips. If you give in now and confess whatever it is they want to know, they might let you go, even though you will probably have long-lasting damage to your body. As long as you revert back to Catholicism, you might be okay. Of course, depending on how important you are or seem to be to the Protestant movement, you could also be hanged and burned. So, potato.
Just imagine the guy sitting there singing head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
I imagine that's probably the song that the guy who's doing Ling Chi was probably saying. But if you hold out and don't give them what they want to know, the gears get another turn or two. And this is when you all start to hear loud pops. The sound of your cartilage breaking and your limbs becoming dislocated from your body. This would also be when they decide to start utilizing other torture techniques, like cutting your body with knives, whipping and beating you, pulling out your... Go what?
I have a mental image of him letting the guy off after that, and he gets up and he's all like this. His arms all floppy. And he's like walking, he's like, see you guys.
Thank you guys so much. Yeah. Had a great time.
I'm totally a Catholic now. It's all good. Jesus could save me.
Time to go get my rosary. Fucking hell. Anyway, this is when they start to utilize other torture techniques. Cutting your body with knives, whipping and beating you, pulling out your finger and toenails, stabbing you with red-hot pokers and the such. They didn't just leave it just the rack. They kind of went at you. Now, death wasn't the intended outcome of the rack. Torture, pain, forcing a confession, long-lasting damage, sure. But not death. Usually. Death came afterwards by use of hanging or being burned at the stake, but you definitely could die on the rack. So take English Jesuit lay brother Nicholas Owen. Now, by the time Owen was born, Queen Mary was dead, and the religious persecution did a complete 180. Now the Protestants were the ruling class, and the Catholics were the outlawed.
Christ.
Catholic. I mean, and it was who's ruling today? Queen Mary. Oh, fuck. Get the Protestants out of here.
And on the Monday you're tortured for being a Protestant. On the Wednesday you're tortured for being a Catholic. Like
you're on the rack getting stretched. Become a Catholic. We'll never do it. And then somebody just walks in and they're like, oh, nope. Mary's dead. Elizabeth's in charge. Get up. So you switch seats. You put the torch. You switch seats. You're all floppy, and you're like, "Become a Protestant. I'll never do it." Ah! Oh, fucking hell!
Sounds like typical government, though. Changing the goalposts all the time.
So Catholic Mass becoming illegal in England in 1559 under Queen Elizabeth I. Owen was born and raised a Catholic and continued his religious practice for his entire life, dedicating his latter years to building priest holes. And I actually have it in parentheses, wait for Dan to stop snickering like a child.
Yeah, I was going to say priest holes. I wanted to make sure that it was what you actually said before. Anybody who's watching will see the quizzical look appears to is that really what he just said? Did I hear him right?
So what they were hidey holes or areas specifically built for priests and other Catholics to hide in. Yes, during raids or searches. So he was apparently amazing at building these things. They were seamless. If you didn't know they were there, you would have no idea that they were there. And apparently most historians and people who study this type of shit would say that they're almost 100% certain that there is, God knows how many, a multitude of these priest holes that even today, centuries later, still have not been found. So I said this to my, because I run a lot of this shit by my wife as I'm, writing out and researching. And I told her this, and this is how I knew that we were meant to be together. I told her, there's a lot of these that probably haven't been found yet. And the first thing out of her mouth is, wonder how many of those still have bodies in them.
I was thinking the same thing.
I was like, that's a good point. I was kind of thinking the same thing. God, I love you.
Some guy just goes into hide, and he's still there. It's like, don't come out until we come get you. Okay, 500 years later.
It's built so well, he doesn't even know how to get out.
Let's say poor Catholic priest, but sure enough.
So in about 1606, he turns himself in. He was arrested a couple times and bailed out and all this, but finally he goes and turns himself in order to distract from some other priests that were hiding nearby in a priest hole he had built. He was soon sent to the Tower of London and was placed in the Topcliffe rack, named after Richard Topcliffe, priest hunter and chief enforcer of the penal laws against Catholics. You got a cat in there?
Sorry, give me 1 second, my apologies. I was digging through a box that has a lot of packaging in it. Get out.
Okay.
I also had this other image there, when I can imagine them building these little priest holes, and all it is actually just a cardboard box sitting in the room. And it's just like, if I can't see them, they can't see me.
Just painted like a bush saying nobody in here.
Yeah.
It's just a tunnel painted on a wall, and the priest tries to run through it.
Like dude, don't open until Catholic rule. Everybody's to this day saying, "No, where these priest holes are? There's a box that's sitting here that says, don't open a Catholic rule." Can't do that. How long's
that box been here? I don't know, 500, 600 years?
Smells kind of funny. Schrodinger's priest.
Oh, that's a good name for a band. I call it.
Schrodinger's priest.
Schrodinger's priest. So this particular kind of rack hung from a wall. Now, Owen's hands were placed in iron gauntlets, and his body would just hang down. So years earlier, Owen suffered from a hernia. And since this is the 16th and early 17th century, once you had a hernia, you pretty much always had a hernia, at least to some extent. It was just, you could lift up your shirt and push it in, but that's about all you can do with it. So during the process of the stretching, the hernia happened to pop out. They slashed at it? Yeah, they slashed at it, and Owens actually died while hanging from the rack because they slashed open his hernia.
Christ. Why? I mean, just for the hell of it? Like, it's just like,
yeah. Well, they're like, what is the candy come out? And they slash it, and like, no, that's poop.
It's like the chest buster scene from Alien, but the other way around. And that's like,
get away! So there was also, as tales go, an unnamed Catholic boy, possibly a teenager, that was placed on the rack and tortured. Now, while on the rack, they lit a fire underneath it to add to the obvious torment. But he was brutalized so badly that the fire was eventually extinguished by the blood dripping from his back.
Ow, what the...
Yeah. That's a lot of fucking... That's about as metal as it fucking...
Yeah, like...
I extinguished the flames with the blood from my back. That's a Death Clock song, if I ever fucking heard it. For those of you who have seen Death Clock, or seen Metalocalypse, know what I'm talking about. That's about as metal as it fucking gets.
Imagine the old fire safety officer for the castle coming in. Like, you gotta inspect the fire extinguishers here. Yeah, blood one's full. It's all good. Because apparently it's really good.
Let me see it. Yeah. Let me see the blood one. Oh, it's just that kid laying over there. It's Fire Marshal Bill comes in. So, and there's the story of Baron Skaw, or Skanaw, however you fucking pronounce it, in Bohemia. And he had been sentenced to be racked for the crime of heresy in the mid-16th century. And he was told if he didn't willingly offer up the names of his confederates, he would be racked until he decided to talk. Well, when the guards came to haul him into the torture chamber, they found that he had cut out his own tongue.
How the fuck do you do that? Like, I have an issue with this thing on my finger here. How the hell people actually... No. Like, what? It's obviously made out of harder stuff. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, these people didn't have air conditioning or heat. They wanted to stay warm. They had to light a fire. We just get to turn a knob. I mean, people back then were tougher than we are now. It's just that's how the way it is. But apparently, it was quite a bit to help because he fell unconscious, probably from pain and blood loss. And next to his unconscious body was a note. Quote, I did not I'm sorry.
If you didn't do it, I was going to.
So I did this extraordinary action because I would not, by any means, or any tortures, be brought to accuse myself or others, as I might, through the excruciating torment of the rack, be implied to utter falsehoods. All one sentence, like 9 commas, just so you know. He may have saved his friends, but since he could no longer talk, they simply racked him to death.
Okay.
So, seems like you put yourself through a lot of shit for nothing. You could have just not talked with a tongue in your mouth, but whatever. But how do you actually die from the rack? Well, limbs weren't just dislocated. Sometimes they were completely ripped from the body. You turn those gears enough times, and the skin's just going to break away. And by that time, the victim was probably never going to talk anyway, so they just leave you there to bleed out. Also,
wonderful.
The rack could stretch not just the limbs, but also the torso itself, leading to massive organ damage and eventual death.
Don't know what to do. I'm putting organs on racks in the first place, but
it's so they can play Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, it's just sitting there in the middle of the tournament or something.
Getting racked, and you just can I get musical accompaniment?
Yeah. Iron butterfly.
Now, why would one be racked or put to the question, as they often said, in the first place? Well, for many reasons. Because you were Catholic, because you were Protestant, because you might know someone that was Catholic and or Protestant. If you were found guilty of treason, arson, patricide, they simply needed information from you and you didn't want to give it up freely.
If it was a Thursday.
Honestly, yes. If they were bored. If
you're bored.
If you stubbed your toe and went, fuck. Yeah. And of course, the
fucking idiots. So, hey, Dave, do you want to go play a game of football? No, I'm bored. Let's go get the rack. Let's go. Let's pick up little Timmy. Stick him on there.
And then, of course, there's the old standard, witchcraft.
Oh. I was going to say, was it witches and or red-haired people and or insert anything you want here.
A red-haired left-handed witch.
With green eyes.
They would put you on 5 racks at the same time. There's this German woman by the name of Barbara Ruffin, or Ruffin, however you want to pronounce it.
The Germans will tell us, I'm sure.
I'm sure
we have
they will.
A listener in Germany that will happily correct us on everything. They are very comical people.
Us Germans are known for our comedy, damn it.
Yeah.
Like the old Michael Myers SNL skit where he's in all black with the hair slicked back. Barb was arrested. I'm going to say Barb like that. It's almost to the point where I can't handle it. If any of you have listened to Letterkenny, you know why there's a character on Letterkenny on Hulu, or I can't remember what the name of the station is up in Canada where it's on. But he's named Coach, and he had a wife. She passed away from cancer, and he calls her Barb, and that's how he says her name. All the name Barb. So I can't say Barb, but that's named Barb. But
sounds like somebody from fucking Fargo.
Well, I mean Canada, Fargo, almost the same thing.
It's cold. Yeah, it's the same.
So Barb was arrested April 7th, 1611 in Elflagen, Germany, on charges of desecrating the Eucharist. A cantankerous 70-year-old woman whose own husband even called her a witch over the days of her incarceration.
We've all been there.
Her interrogation, more and more of her neighbors came forward to insist that she was indeed a witch, including her own daughter-in-law, which is par for the course, I suppose, for a lot of us. Obviously, Barb refuted these claims and refused to admit practicing witchcraft. But by the 12th of April, the torturers decided that the only way to get a confession was to use the old reliable, the rack. So the first day of torture, she was racked twice.
Das
for
Rack.
15 Das Rack. For 15 minutes at a time. By the end of the third day, she had been racked a total of 7 times.
That, in different contexts, would sound like an impressive number in other areas. Like, world record been set. 7 times, 50 guys.
9. You know what? Just go do it. Get the record. Give me 10. Give me 10. Now, by the end of the... I already said that part. She finally confessed to being a witch and gave the name of several accomplices before being beheaded with a sword and her body burnt. Now, this would lead to the hunt for witches in and around Elflagen that quickly spiraled out of control, ending the year with over 100 men and women being murdered in 17 mass executions, another 150 the following year.
Nice.
So, yeah. So, because one guy was obviously not happy with his wife, and a daughter-in-law was being, a dick. 250 people died because of it.
Again,
literally no reason.
Again, easy divorce right there. We've already learned about those.
Outlaw yourself. You just get divorced. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to kill 250 fucking people.
The Germans don't do anything by halves, though, do they?
No, we go like all in or nothing. All in or nothing.
You don't like divorce? Well, no, you get it back.
You don't like your wife?
Don't know why I turned Russian in a minute of that.
Kill 150 people. You don't like this? You don't like this group of people? Genocide for everyone. Us Germans we go at it. But you hear me mention in the story that the rack was used in Germany, which leads to our next question. Where all was the rack used? Well, pretty much all over Europe and a few countries outside of.
Typically in
many of these
dungeons.
Mm-hmm.
You did ask where.
Billionaire playboys, sex dungeons, and the like. So many of these countries had their own variations. The standard English rack would be either a table or a bed made of wood with pulleys or gears on top and bottom with chains or ropes attached. Sometimes they were placed at an angle, usually about 90 degrees, and sometimes they were just hung from a wall. Then there was the French model, which was much like the English version with one painful difference. The French version had large spikes on the bed, sometimes rollers. So when you were placed on the bed, the spikes dug into and pierced your flesh.
Nice.
Yeah, the wounds possibly getting stretched out as the gears were turned. And then you had the Russian version, which was probably the most unique, in there wasn't a table or a bed, but beams. A rope would be fed through a pulley that was attached to a beam high up above.
I was going to say, the French one was obviously called a low rack.
rack.
And I guess in the Russian was called the rack.
Yeah, but it was spelled with what Alan Tudyk said in Transformers. It was spelled with all the buttons you never use on a calculator.
Yeah.
So the rope would be fed through a pulley that was attached to the beam high above. The rope would then be tied to the victim's wrists, and they would be hoisted up. Then the ankles would be tied together, and another beam would be placed in between the legs, and it would be anchored to the ground, somehow, however they were able to. And then the rope threaded through the pulley would be pulled, stretching the victim. Now, this iteration of the rack had a very specific advantage over the English one, as it opened the victim up to virtually any other type of punishment they could think of. Whippings, beatings, cuttings, and a favorite of the Russians, burning. Stabbed and branded with hot pokers all over the body. Burned with torches, that sort of thing. Now, they did the same thing on the English and French kind, but something about you just hanging there in the middle of a room or even outside really opens you up to, pretty much anything they feel the need to do to you.
Yeah. So it's a main scenario of just a way of holding somebody, and being able to do whatever the hell you want all in one.
Yeah. Now, they could pull the pulley and set it up, tie it to a donkey or whatever, and really pull the fuck out of you if they felt like it, while doing all this other stuff. So, yeah.
It sounds kinky.
Just tie it to a donkey and have the dog, you just getting stretched going, jackass!
Yeah. Pull the fuck out of me.
And Charles I authorized the use of the rack against Catholic priests in Ireland in 1627. Now, apparently it didn't last very long in Ireland, that type of stuff, It was kind of the later end of how the rack was still being used in the area. But
they probably made it out of potatoes and they just ate it instead or something stupid. The guy who was building it, the guy who was building it just kind of got drunk on poaching or some shit, and it ended up making a couch instead, and that's how we became the inventors of the couch.
They built it out of potatoes, lit a fire under it, tried to torture the person, and everybody sitting in there going, oh man, I could go for some fries. Yeah. I could go for some... They all just stopped and had a snack.
That's why they got French fries, because they took the inspiration from Le Rack. You see, that's what it was.
There you go. It all comes around. Always just one full circle. Circle of life. Elton John, all that good stuff. So it was even used in Spain and Portugal during the Inquisition. Tomás de Torquemada, the first Grand Inquisitor in Spain, was a huge fan of the rack. So this kind of leads me to the story. Men. Yeah, most men are fans of the rack. Not fans of being racked, though, which is what we used to call it when we were kids if you got hit in the nuts. You rack me in the nuts. So, which might be worse than the rack itself. I don't know. We're men. We're all babies. So this all leads me to a story that answers the question I imagine many of us that take an interest in this time period and subject matter. What happens if I just immediately recant my confession or conversion? So during the height of the Spanish Inquisition in the 16th century, a Portuguese woman named Maria de Canseco was arrested on charges of heresy and sent to the torture chamber where she was racked. To avoid having her arms and legs ripped out of their sockets, Senor Canseco immediately confessed, but as soon as she was released from the rack, she refuted her confession. So a second turn on the rack brought an identical response. Got on the rack, pulled it a little bit. She's like, okay, I'll tell you what you want to know. And then they take her off the rack. And it's, all that stuff I said, that was just bullshit. So this was actually a familiar pattern. Confess anything to make the pain stop and then recant when released. In her case, Canseco was both clever enough and brave enough to tell her tormentors, as soon as I am released from the rack, I shall deny whatever was extorted from me by pain. Maria was far more lucky than the tens of thousands of other victims of the Spanish Inquisition. She was publicly flogged and sentenced to 10 years in exile, but the courage of her conviction saved her from being burned at the stake. So I guess between the two, getting flogged and exiled for 10 years, a lot better than, dying.
Yeah, I kind of rather that. Yeah. Like exiled to where, like, you just can't be in your local town.
Yeah. Where am I getting exiled to? This island in the tropics. Oh, so like paradise? You're going to exile me to paradise?
Ireland. Just into Ireland.
Oh, well. Well, I don't know.
Well, actually, which country was this in again?
Portugal.
Oh, no, that's all right. Okay, so chances are, being honest, they actually probably would have sent them to North Africa if they had sent them off somewhere. So no way to Spain, all the way to Gibraltar, and all of a sudden they used it to ship people over who were like prisoners and shit to North Africa. I'm assuming that they would have done the same thing over there, because I know England did it to Australia, which is even bloody longer. But this whole thing, like, is from Gibraltar, as far as I remember. They sent people to Africa, used as a passageway, I think. But anyway,
imagine getting exiled to Australia, not knowing anything about it, and they just drop you off. And they're like, "Don't we have any guards?" No, nobody's going to keep an eye on us. No, everything here is going to try to kill you. Good luck. You just kick them and push them off the boat. Good luck.
See you in 10 years. We're free. Yeah.
We're going to exile you to the worst place possible, Camden, New Jersey.
I was about to say Canada.
Not New Jersey. Dan, I have a confession to make. I have
crabs.
Beard dandruff. So close.
So much worse.
I know. Look away, I'm hideous. All seriousness. All serious.
All serious.
All serious. Me serious now. No funny. No Frankenstein. No fire. Bad. Ah. In all seriousness, many of us men with facial hair have some sort of dry skin under their face fur. I have particularly dry skin, especially on my face, around my nose, my eyes, ears. That beard and mustache, they draw a ton of moisture from your skin in order to stay healthy, leaving the skin underneath sometimes dry, itchy, red, flaky, leading to the beard dandruff. And I struggled with it for quite a while. Struggled to, rein it in. Then I found thebeardstruggle.com. They use all natural products, never tested on animals, that your face, body, and beard will love.
They have day oils to protect your beard from UV rays and dirt and grime, and it keeps your skin from drying out. All the troubles the day can bring. And they have night oils to help moisturize and rejuvenate your skin and beard while you sleep. Not to mention, as of right now, they have 8 different fragrances. According to this.
That's what they tell me. That's what they tell me.
Do you want to know what they are?
I do. I want you to.
Ready?
I want you to pronounce them perfectly.
Okay. Here we go. Ready?
Okay. Yeah.
From Alfheim's Forest, which has the scent of woodsy, leather and spices, to Hionir's Home, with the scents of greenery, amber and musk, to Valhalla's Gates, with essences of citrus, amber, sandalwood and vanilla.
Now, right now I'm using the Aesir's Triumph, which I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, which has the scent of sweet incense, tobacco, whiskey, and cinnamon, and my wife absolutely loves it. Of course, I haven't gotten one from them that she hasn't loved, so. And if you can't choose, just get the sample pack, which comes with 6 of their mainstay scents and 5 milliliter bottles of nighttime elixir, so you can decide what is best for you. But they have so much more than just oils. Balms, wax, shampoo, conditioner, butters, cologne, natural deodorant, skincare products, heated beard straighteners, combs, brushes, shaving kits, growth kits, merch. List goes on and on and on. No matter what kind, length, or style of facial hair you have, the Beard Struggle has the products you need.
You get a free gift for purchases over $50, then you get another free gift for purchases over $100, and all orders over $65 get free shipping. You have a 90-day money-back guarantee, so you really have nothing to lose. And be sure to use our exclusive coupon code TORTURE19 at checkout to get 19% off your entire order. That's TORTURE19 at checkout for 19% off your entire order.
Torture19 at checkout, or click on the link in the show notes. TheBeardStruggle.com. Do what's right for your beard. Do what's right for your face. Now, for those of you that know, are probably screaming at your phone or radio or computer, what about the Porto? Well, I'm not going to get into the Porto because it wasn't really Iraq. It's going to get its own episode in the future, either on its own or when we do an episode about Tomás de Torquemada. Just because it's made out of wooden ropes doesn't technically mean it's Iraq.
Apply that logic anywhere.
I was... You're just in a store, like, what is this? Wooden ropes? A rack.
Yeah, next time I see a rope ladder, the one you get for like a tree house or whatever, like, oh my god, it comes with a free rack. Ugh.
Be careful around that thing. The Catholics might come and stretch you out on it.
Or Proddies, depends on the day of the week.
Or the Protestant, depends on who's in charge at the time. I had it in here and I was looking at it, and the more I looked at it, the more I thought, God, that's almost too different. And if you look up Porto on the internet, the city will come up and the rack will come up. But it felt like it was such a unique thing on its own, the variation that was used during the Spanish Inquisition, that it was almost a crime to have it in here, and we should cover it on its own, especially when we cover Torquemada at some point.
Yeah, I just looked up some pictures.
So that's why I said
it looks different enough that...
Yeah, I think it's different enough that we can do our own, do its own episode, or again, with Torquemada, because that's really what it was used, was with him. Anyway, so when did this diabolical device of human degradation come into existence? Well, the rack that we all know of today was introduced in 1420 by a one John Holland, the second Duke of Exeter and Constable of the Tower of London. Now, the Duke infamously liked to use the rack on women, giving the device, for a time, the nickname the Duke of Exeter's daughter. But with this statement, which I found on a few pieces of research material, there is a bit of confusion, because it is said that he liked to use it on women, and we've talked before about how they kept very concise records on torture and the victims at this time. But the only recorded use of the rack on a woman at the tower was the Protestant saint Anne Askew, which takes place a century after Holland introduced it. Which means, one of two things, really. He either didn't use it on women at all, and it was just propaganda, or he used it on women, and for some reason they didn't keep a record of it. I don't understand, because I couldn't take the two ideas and put them together and come up with anything that made any sense.
Say, this is Anne Askew before she was on the rack. Yeah. And this is Anne Askew after she was on the rack.
You're not too far off.
You get it? You get it?
Yes.
Sooty!
She's slightly askew.
Yeah.
But you also had her stretched out, which is good.
I didn't mean to do that. That was a happy accident. Right there. Yeah.
So, I put the two together. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, well, they kept records about people, so if he did use it on women, those would be recorded. Unless for some reason he was doing it outside the Tower of London, like at his home, for some type of erotic novel that most of us can't stand, or movie with Dakota Johnson. I don't know, but yeah. So those two ideas don't really mesh together. But I got to go with what I presented. So apparently Anne Askew was the only woman recorded in the Tower of London to be stretched on the rack. So let's talk about Anne for just a minute.
The Queen jumped on it the odd time because I bet you she had a bit of a,
Again, all I could think of is Morticia Adams. You're like, ooh, reminds me of our honeymoon. So Anne Askew was born in 1521 and you've given me shit about how I say these before.
The pronunciations. Here we go.
I was going to call, because it's spelled Lincolnshire, but I know now that it's more like Lincolnshire.
Yeah,
right?
Lincolnshire, yeah. And Shire is
which,
Shire now, so which is, I know it's kind of...
Yeah. Well, no, for Americans, for some reason we see the word Shire and we want to say Shire, probably because of like Lord of the Rings.
That's where it came from, though. Like it used to be Shire.
Yeah,
like, and they're still known as shires in that sense. Like, I mean, like they would still be known as a shire, but it's kind of like probably in the same way. Like, let's say Liverpool. Yeah, the main building it is the Liver building, but it's Liverpool.
Okay.
Yeah, just like it's.
Yeah, I don't. It's weird.
See, I have one here now. I wonder if you'd be able to pronounce it right.
Lexter. I'm sure it's way off.
No, I don't blame you on this, and I like it. It's Leicester. Like,
yeah, okay.
Like, take away the.
Yeah, you showed me that one.
Take away the second, third, fourth letter. That's basically.
Take out all those letters and change them to something different, and you have French.
I was actually thinking about it because you were going about England. I was like, oh gosh, we should we should do a thing where we get a load of names of places and throw them out and be like, hey, hold on, see, can you pronounce it?
That'll be another Patreon show that we do along with the difference between Irish and American food is, can Kevin pronounce it?
You should look up the longest name of a town.
I've seen that. Please don't, because I will make an ass of it.
Hilarious. I can't do it. It's so goddamn fun. Even the Welsh thing, it's stupid.
I think the people in the town are the only people that can actually pronounce that fucking word.
Yeah, I've an awful lot of Welsh people would. I don't know. It's after opening up actually, and actually has a sign underneath it that tells you how to pronounce it. Yeah, and you still but it's Welsh, so you can't. Yeah. Most people can't get their mouths to make those noises, so you still pronounce it wrong.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. But anyway, for some reason when Americans see the word Shire, they say Shire, but we have a state here called New Hampshire, which has Shire at the end of it. So anytime you just see the Shire at the end of a word, it's pronounced sure. You just think of New Hampshire. So it's Lincolnshire. Anyway, she was born 1521 in Lincolnshire into a wealthy family, the daughter of William Askew, a rich landowner. Anne was well educated, and when she was very young, Anne became a Protestant during the reign of Henry VIII. A dangerous time to be a Protestant. She read the Bible eagerly and memorized parts of it. At the age of 15, she was arranged to marry landowner Thomas Kim, a Catholic. She was eventually thrown out of her home because of her religion and ended up moving to London and meeting up with other Protestants. She started Bible study and became a preacher, which was very taboo at the time for a woman to preach to men about the gospel. Now, after a couple of arrests... After a couple of her arrests and releases, and even another escape from her husband, she was finally arrested in May 1546 and taken to the Tower of London. Now, they tried to get her to give up the names of like-minded women, but she would not, so she was put on the rack and stretched. Now, it is recorded that the stretching got so bad that the constable at the time had to walk out in disgust. And when you get the constable of the Tower of London to go, "I'm out," and leave the room, you're doing some funky shit.
She walked out of there and became the star player of London's basketball team. Standing
I don't know.
7.5 foot tall.
I don't know about the London I don't think anybody does, unless you live in London.
I'm pretty sure if you live in London, you still don't know about the London basketball team.
So all of her limbs were dislocated, and the cartilage and ligaments in her joints were torn to shreds. She never talked, so good on her. But the next month, still unable to walk or use her hands properly, she was found guilty of heresy and sentenced to burn. But because she was racked so viciously, she had to be carried to her execution. She couldn't walk.
Just lazy.
They had to put her.
It's just
they had to put her in a chair and carry her. It's like, oh, every time we pick her up, she just goes limp.
Yeah, Ling Chi dude sitting there on the side of the crowd, kind of like so disappointed in her.
Using his own blood to write on the wall. Get over it.
Book the fuck up.
At least you still have your legs, kind of. They're technically attached.
Just flippity floppy.
But just because the Duke of Exeter was the first to bring it to the Tower of London doesn't mean that that's where we first see the rack, or at least a version of it. For that, we have to go all the way back to the age of antiquity. And we aren't 100% sure which country it exactly showed up in first. But some of the earliest examples are from Greece. It was used on slaves and non-Greeks. And then, in 356 BC, a young Greek named Herostratus decided to burn down the Temple of Artemis in the city of Ephesus, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. He was found guilty and tortured to death on the rack. Now, before he died, he gave his motive for the arson, as he wanted his name to live on forever. So the Greeks made it illegal to say his name.
Fuck you, Greeks. We're doing that shit right here, right now. He got his wish. Immortalized forever on this podcast. You're welcome.
You got some, 2,300-year-old Greek just like, oh, fucking gonna get him.
He's going to be the first person to leave us a review on Apple.
He's going to leave a one-star review. Was not a fan, said bad words, laughed a couple times. Now, this whole ban on his name lasted for a couple hundred years before a storyteller decided to say fuck it and started using his name to tell the story of the burning of the Temple of Artemis. Now, this is where the term Herostratic criminal comes from, which is someone who breaks the law for notoriety. It's like, why did you do it? Oh, just so people will say my name. Alexander the Great had the men that conspired to assassinate him tortured on the rack in 328 BC. 65 AD, Nero used the rack to interrogate a woman named Epicharis to find conspirators who wanted to kill the emperor. She, just like Askew, was unable to move after her first day on the rack and had to be carried back to the rack the next day, but she ended up strangling herself with a cord on the chair they carried her on. So they're like, you ready? You good?
Stubborn.
You're in the chair.
Woman. That's about it.
Don't move. Don't fall out. They pick her up by the time they get there.
But my legs are too floppy. My legs are too floppy.
She's fucking dead. She can't even use her arms. How's she do it? I don't know. She used her teeth or something. She's fucking dead. Saint Vincent of Saragossa was stretched on the rack in 304 AD while his flesh was torn away with iron hooks.
Ouch.
Yeah.
I suppose I don't know with iron. I don't know why I thought with hot iron, but it's just straight up iron hooks. That's if they're hot, then okay, but at least they cauterize it. But yeah, it's just like that thing. It was which Saw movie was it? Because again, we only watched them there a while ago. So there's one of them where a guy has big hooks or.
The ones where he's got to put it in.
True, and he has to. No, what it is he's hooked up and he's in a room and he's chains hanging out of him and he has hoops coming through his hand and he has some in his neck. And he has some on the back. He has some at his Achilles.
His Achilles tendon. Yeah, I think that was the second one. He gets he gets the hooks out and he goes to stand up to leave and you realize that there's one in his tendon and it's just you're fucked. Yeah, you're fucked. You're never getting out of there. That's the same one.
The worst thing is he broke the ones in his tendon though. Was the worst thing. It was like one in his arm that he couldn't get or in his side or something before he died.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
That's the same one with the isn't that the girl has her head attached to something and it ends up scalping her or some shit like that.
So.
If I remember. Yeah. I think that was the second one, but
I think it's the third one.
Sure.
Yeah, but anyway, sure. Look,
it's a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So horrible.
Now let's jump all the way up to 1307. King Philip IV of France had thousands of Knights Templar rounded up and put to the rack, along with being beaten and starved, on charges of heresy. Most of them eventually confessed, and they were put to death. And then, wouldn't you guess it, the crown confiscated all their land and property. As we discussed before. Catholics. Yeah, Knights Templar. What do you think this is? Assassin's Creed. And then we jump up to 1606 to quite possibly the most famous rack victim of all. Remember the 5th of November. Guy Fawkes, British soldier and best known participant in the gunpowder plot. Now, its object was to blow up the palace at Westminster during the state opening of Parliament, while James I and his chief ministers met within in reprisal for increasing oppression of Roman Catholics in England. So let's take a quick look at Guy and the gunpowder plot. So most of us know him as the anonymous mask man, V for Vendetta.
Hugo Weaving.
Yes. Natalie Portman having her head shaved.
As long as he keeps talking to me, he can put me in the rack anytime, Hugo.
As long as he only speaks in V's. So Guy Fawkes was born 1570 in York. This is Old York, not New York. That's different.
Is it Yorkshire? Yorkshire.
It's just York. I know how to pronounce that one.
It's actually pronounced York.
You're pronouncing actually.
York. It's York.
It's York. That was more Jersey. York? Yeah. His father, Edward, was a prominent Protestant in the city, but died when Guy was just 8 years old. So his mother remarried, but this time she married a Catholic. In the 1570s and 80s, York was the center of Catholic resistance.
You never go full Catholic.
Never go. You know why you don't award? Because you go full Catholic. Yeah. You never go full Catholic. About that time, Fawkes found himself. I gotta re-get my bearings. I'm sorry. About the time that Fawkes himself converted, he would have been aware of a particularly brutal example of the religious suppression. In 1586, Margaret Clitheroe was publicly executed for protecting priests in her home. Now, if you don't know who Margaret Clitheroe is, or you know the name but can't remember who she is, I would urge you to go listen to our Crushing episode to find out all about Margaret. Caution,
she doesn't like
graphic. That's a different... Oh, yeah, no, yes, no, yeah, wait, no doors, just a lot of stones, if I remember right. But she was the one who had like 800 pounds just thrown on her, and yeah.
She's the one that just went smushy smush. Well, I thought she had a door involved. Or something. I don't know.
That was months ago. I don't know. Go listen to the episode and
tell us.
You tell us. Yeah. Tell us what the fuck we were talking about, please. But that also brings in the whole priest hidey holes that Owens made. So, again, full circle.
Oh, yeah.
Now, as an adult, Fawkes inherited property in York, but on his 21st birthday, he sold his estate and enlisted in the Catholic Spanish Army, and he spent the next 10 years fighting for Spain against the Dutch, and spent some time in Italy, where he chose the moniker Guido Fawkes for the ladies.
Guido.
Yeah, he changed his name while he was in Italy to Guido because he thought it attracted more women.
Fair enough. Okay.
I guess.
Guido shot first. No, he did not.
No, he didn't. Han shot first because he was kind of a dick.
I don't know. I'd like to actually rewatch it because I saw stills, and the thing is, like, I think in the original one, he actually didn't shoot first-handed, and then in the latest version, he's clearly shooting first. But then in
I thought
later one, they shot at the exact same time or some shit. I don't know.
I thought it was the opposite. So. I thought in the original he shot first, and then they remade it to where Greedo shoots first because they didn't want Han coming off as any kind of bad guy. But it could literally be either or. I don't know. You tell us.
In the original version of the scene, Han shoots him dead. Later versions are edited to that Greedo attempts to fire at Han.
There we go.
So he never even got shot off, I don't think, in the original version. I don't know. I'll read through it in a while and we'll find out, because this is being put to bed tonight, people.
Now, he becomes a commander of a unit of soldiers and an expert in explosives. He also gained a reputation for his technical expertise, and on behalf of some of the English Catholics, he discussed with the Spanish an invasion of England. He actually even talks to the Spanish king about, hey, why don't we go invade England? Now, in Madrid in 1604, Fawkes meets up with a friend from school named Kit Wright, and they joined a group of conspirators. Guy heads back to England, and in May 1604, Guy Fawkes, Robert Catesby, Tom Wintour, Jack Wright, who was Kit's brother, and Thomas Percy met at the Duck and Drake Inn in London, where Catesby proposed a plan to blow up the House of Parliament with gunpowder. Afterwards, all 5 men purportedly swore an oath of secrecy upon a prayer book. 8 other conspirators would later join to what would become known as the Gunpowder Plot. Later that month, Percy rents a house next to the House of Lords, and it was decided that Fawkes would pretend to be Percy's servant and live there, and he adopted the false identity of, and this is just the most creative thing in the world, John Johnson.
No.
Who are you? Steve? Steve what? Steve in Thinkshire?
Oh, good God, that was just really, yeah. Steve Stevenson?
John Johnson. Or it's like that Family Guy episode where he's trying to get into rehab with Brian because he gets free food, and they're like, what's your name? He's like, and he sees somebody's plate and it's got a P on it. P. They see somebody crying. He's like, tear, and then a griffin flies through. Griffin. Peter Griffin. God damn it. So John Johnson was closely involved in the business of digging a tunnel under the House of Lords and procuring gunpowder. Now, apparently, and this makes pretty much no sense, but I guess they were able to rent the cellar under the House of Lords?
How do you do that shit?
Like, can I rent a storage unit under the Capitol building? Like does the White House? Does the White House have like those rent-to-own shit underneath that you could just store shit? I mean, that's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard. It's like, guys, you know how we want to blow up this building? You can rent space underneath it.
So that's where Trump put all of his secret documentation there. You see, this news store thing underneath.
There's just U-Haul trucks parked underneath the White House filled with documents.
Technically, they're not the property.
Yeah. I would declassify them, but I'm not, president anymore. So, I don't know. Apparently, they were able to rent a storage facility underneath the House of Lords. Seems too easy. Like they were asking for it.
Yeah.
Now, anyway, Fawkes started loading up gunpowder under the House of Lords and covering them in piles of sticks and coal. Now, the plan was Fawkes would light a fuse on November 5th, remember the 5th of November, 1605, during the opening of a new session of Parliament. James I, his eldest son, the House of Lords, and the House of Commons will all be blown sky high. In the meantime, as Fawkes escapes by boat across the River Thames, his fellow conspirators would start an uprising in the English Midlands, kidnap James's daughter Elizabeth, install her as a puppet queen, and eventually marry her off to a Catholic, thereby restoring the Catholic monarchy. It's like, we're just gonna, just a bunch of guys. We're going to kidnap somebody and make them queen. That's
how it works.
That's how it fucking works.
Hey, want to be queen? Okay.
It's like She's All That. It's just some lady walking down the street, glasses, hair up, be like, take the glasses off and pull her hair out, and her hair goes down, and now she's a queen. It's Pygmalion is what it is. Now, on October 26th, an anonymous letter advising a Catholic sympathizer to avoid the state opening of Parliament alerted the authorities to the existence of a plot. To this day, no one knows for sure who wrote the letter. Some historians have even suggested that it was fabricated and the authorities already knew of the gunpowder plot, only letting it progress as an excuse to further crack down on Catholicism, which makes a lot more sense when you think about it. Be like, can we rent a storage unit under the House of Lords? And they're all like, sure. Why don't we do that?
Just walking
we don't have any idea
about leasing some property underneath this building. When? The 5th of November. you mean when this? Yeah. When? Yeah.
When literally everybody in charge is supposed to be here. Yeah. What are you going to store under there? Just some sticks and coal. Piles and piles of
barrels
sticks
of stuff.
And coal. Sure. Yeah. Why not? Nothing sketchy going on here. Would make more sense that they actually knew what was going on and just kind of let them get to a certain extent before they shut it down to show just how dangerous Catholicism would be. But either way, a search party. My Boston came back out.
Got a party hard.
So a search party found Fawkes skulking in this cellar around midnight, November 4th into the 5th, with matches in his pocket and 36 barrels of gunpowder stacked next to him. He was taken to the Tower of London and tortured upon the special order of King James. When asked by one of the interrogators what he was doing in possession of so much gunpowder, Fawkes answered that his intention was, quote, to blow you Scotch beggars back to your native mountains. So at least, it's like, fuck off. Yeah, you caught me, and I would have done it again, too. I'd have gotten away with it if it weren't for your fucking Scotch. The torture would start off as light at first, meaning they used manacles, which is pretty much just handcuffs hanging from a wall. Then would become more severe, and of course, ending with the rack. Fawkes endured 3 full days of being racked over and over again until he finally gave up his fellow conspirators. He passed out before he could sign his name to the confession. Didn't matter in the end. How horrible would that be? You go through all this work to get this guy to confess. It's like, all right, just sign your name. Sign your name. And he passes out. It's like, fuck, we got to start over.
Just special order in his face.
Waterboard him. No, you killed him. God damn it. We were so close. We got nothing. Paperwork just out the window. All this fucking red tape. But again, yeah, okay. But it doesn't matter. All but 4 of the conspirators were arrested and taken to execution. And the 4 that weren't died in an age-old medieval shootout with English troops. What were they fucking using to shoot at each other in 1606?
I was going to say...
Blunderbusses?
I can say it'd be the most boring gunfight ever. Like,
just horse and carriage going through the streets of London, and they got to go.
Like the scene in Heat. Remember the shooting on the streets in Heat like that, but like 15,000 times longer because like the sound you had to be on the horse and carriage.
Just going around in circles around London, a shot like every 2 minutes.
There's a major shootout in the middle of London today.
Take him out. You got the shot. Take him out. Give me 41 seconds. And he's got a fucking puppet. It's either that or bows and arrows. I mean, I don't know what else you can. What else?
Not really much of a shootout, is it?
It would be. But every time they're shooting at the police, they're like, pew, pew. But yeah, they all died. So.
Okay. They probably died of exhaustion from running so much.
Yeah, at the end of it, they're just laying on the ground, like, just fucking do it. I can't load up another musket.
See, they used all their gunpowder underneath Parliament, you see, so they couldn't reload anymore.
Did you bring any of that gunpowder? No, it's all underneath the House of Lords.
What do you mean it's sent to a guy?
All right, pick up rocks and start throwing them. They're just like, it would have made John Wick a lot less interesting. That's all I'm saying.
What if he had like flintlocks?
If he had a fucking blunderbuss instead of,
Yeah, that cool like scene, and like I think it's in the second one, like in a nightclub or something like that. Or it might be the first one, I'm not sure. Maybe second. I don't know. But anyway, he's walking through, and this is one of those cool, badass, fast reload, quintessential John Wick moments. I can imagine if he had like a fucking flintlock pistol going through there, and it's just like, and everybody else is just in the middle of doing it. Everybody's going really fast.
The only thing that I think with John Wick that would work better with like a flintlock or a blunderbuss or something is he has this compulsion to, when he's out of bullets, to just throw the gun at the guy's face. I imagine a blunderbuss flying at you would probably do a lot more damage than just like a Glock.
There sure wasn't end of them built to be used as a club or something as well.
I'm sure it probably was.
But since John Wick.
But since he always throws a gun away after he's done with it, I just imagine like that scene in the last movie where they're on the streets of France, just flintlocks literally everywhere because he just keeps throwing them.
I still haven't watched the latest one.
You still haven't watched it?
No,
I won't say anymore. I won't say anymore. But my God,
I need to sort my own fucking life out in that regard.
You do. You really do. You need to put that shirt on.
I think I can rent it or something.
Should be able to rent it on TV.
Yeah, I think it's still really expensive to rent though at the moment. So.
Oh really?
Yeah.
So I wasn't over here, but you need to put that sort your fucking life out shirt on and go stand in a mirror for a while.
Yeah. I did that earlier on today, actually, and then because I wanted to see it and match my trousers, and it didn't, so I didn't wear it today. But this is, so.
Fair enough. I never look and see what matches. I just put on whatever I have next to me and go. I don't give a shit.
I thought you were married.
I am. She doesn't care.
Severely judged.
No, she doesn't care. As long as she looks good, that's all. She doesn't care what I fucking wear. She couldn't care less what I wear, which is nice.
That's good.
Anyway, but I won't talk anymore about John Wick. It's amazing. You'll love it. New characters that you're going to fall in love with. It's fucking great. Watch it as soon as you can.
Sweet.
Anyway, the final sentence for Fawkes was he was to be hanged, then drawn and quartered. But during the hanging, so literally they just put a rope around your neck, hoisted you up, and you strangled to death. And when they did this, they would also castrate you, disembowel you, and remove your heart, all while you're technically still alive. So instead of going through all that, Fawkes had one final fuck you to the king, and once they had the rope around his neck, he ran and jumped. He's like, watch this motherfucker. He ran and jumped off the scaffold, snapping his own neck and sparing himself from the subsequent pain to come. I mean, you're going to die anyway. You might as well just fucking go out.
Terms.
Yeah, no shit. He was drawn and quartered, and his arms and legs were sent to the quote-unquote four corners of the empire, and his head was placed on a spike at the Tower of London and all that shit. But he was already dead.
So he joined old William.
Yeah, William Wallace.
Oh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. In 1708, Britain formally outlawed the practice of torture as a part of the Treason Act. What is perhaps the most surprising thing is that the punishment itself wasn't officially outlawed on a worldwide scale until the United Nations held a convention against torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment in 1984. So
nice.
Technically, for all you Gen Xers and elder millennials as myself, the use of the rack wasn't technically against the law worldwide. You could still technically be tortured on the rack in our lifetime.
I'm going to, just for a bit of a reference here, I'm going to look up songs that were released in 1984.
Yeah, I was born in 83, so for the first year of my life, I could have been tortured to death on the rack.
While Madonna was singing Like a Virgin, you could be tortured legally on a rack.
But weren't they the same thing?
Yeah. Let me
I
see.
didn't mean that, Madonna. I'm sorry. Your old stuff was good. Your new stuff, not so much. But your old stuff was good. I'll give you that.
While Van Halen were singing about how they were hot for teacher, you could be done on a rack.
Mm-hmm.
Footloose.
Which, if you were on the rack, you might have been.
Yep. That's true. Remember that scene where Kevin's all against the wall like that? That was symbolism for the rack people. Pretty much. And then here's two more. Blue Jean from David Bowie. Blue Jean.
Mm-hmm.
And then my personal favourite, Big Bottoms by This Is Spinal Tap.
There you go.
Yeah. So
turn it up to 11.
There's a few.
And you look at Star Wars. Star Wars, when it first came out, they were still killing people with the guillotine in France. So technically, you could be tortured on the rack and then had your head chopped off in the guillotine after you saw Star Wars in the movie theater.
Nice. That's the first one?
Yeah.
All right. I was going to say, you never got to find out that Darth Vader was Luke Skywalker's father. Spoiler alert!
How horrible would that have been?
But it would have been worse if you were in the middle of watching it and they told you before the scene came up and then they put your ass on guillotine or something.
It's just Luke hanging from that fucking thing and Vader standing there. He's like, "You killed my father," and he's like, "No," and then you die.
You go, "No," and then pause it. Like, you're ready to go.
It's just like you're just in, purgatory or whatever. Like, what the fuck happened? And they send you to hell, and they're like, "We never tell you what happened."
You get to watch hell. Your hell is you get to watch the movie up to that point. Then it stops and restarts.
You watch Empire over and over, but it always stops at that point.
But they managed to edit the Ewoks in. Even though it's from a different movie. It's just nothing but Ewoks.
It jumps straight from that scene right after Vader says no, and all of a sudden you're on Endor. Yeah. It's like what is happening? Oh fuck! All right, everybody, that's all I got for the rack. I know there was a lot of stories, but Dan, do you have any pop culture? Because I kept mentioning the Addams Family.
Yeah, there's a buttload of movies, as I discovered a while back. If you go onto IMDb, if you want to look for movies with particular things in it, you can look for keywords for it. And I have a few of them open to the side, but there's something I had here as a list thing. Sorry that I'm trying to get open on my phone.
Yeah,
I came across some of the worst jokes I've ever heard earlier. So. To give you one I thought was cool was apparently it's in an episode of Inspector Gadget. When the whole thing is he's at a day spa trying to chill out and somebody basically decides to fuck up his day, and it's one of those things where, as far as I remember, he's completely unaware that this is happening. So he's put through a rack and he thinks it's like a spa treatment or something, stuff like that.
Well, because his arms stretch.
Yeah, anyway. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it wouldn't be much of a.
There's where's this gone here? An episode of I Spy called A Room with a Rack. So, but there's tons of things like it's in The Tudors, The Borgias has a thing to the rack in it.
Uh-huh.
A more poignant one is there is a movie that was released in 1962 called The Tower of London, and it has one of the greatest old school horror actors of all time. Can you guess who that is?
No.
One old Mr. Vincent Price. And then there's another Tower of London as well, so kind of keeping with the same theme here.
Mm-hmm.
There are sadly no examples of members of singers of rock bands wearing Iron Man suits yet. But what we do have is quite possibly the single greatest / worst example of something ever, as far as I'm concerned, which is 1989's rated R 1 hour and 29 minutes of complete and utter bullshit. Dolph Lundgren's The Punisher. It is worth a watch just because of how fucking bad it is. It's Dolph Lundgren bad. Like I loved him in Universal Soldier only because he didn't really say too much, and he gets blinded, But like he has a TV show that we watched, we're called like The Tower or something. That's meant to be like, it's meant to be this kind of piss take, as if like these contestants come in, like you or I could sign up for it, and he meant to pass all these tests. It's meant to be like an action movie where he meant to try and get to the penthouse at the top to get to the big bad guy who is Dolph Lundgren, right? And he has a suitcase full of cash type thing that you win or something. And like they go through all these different things that you go through in action movies, all these different trope things you have to do, right? When you get up the top, you end up in a shootout with Dolph Lundgren, which is but two of you sitting on a table, right? And you have this fucking screen up with a thing on top of it, a little cardboard thing, and you have a little plastic gun that shoots those kind of rubber darts that they should just shoot those off. And whenever anybody was eliminated from it, they bring him up, right? They bring him up to Dolph up in his penthouse, and he brings him over to the window, and it's like they get thrown out the window, but it's actually only about 2 foot, and there's a pad right there, and you can actually see people's feet hit. So it is fucking brilliant. I must look it up and text it on to you. I find out the exact name, but it is so funny. And actually, I'm going to tell you what the name of it is right now because I have Dolph Lundgren open here in the Punisher. But
I mean, you bring that type of thing to the insurance company, be like, no, we're going to shoot each other at the end of it. Yeah. Well, no, not with real guns. Okay, we'll use real guns, but blanks. No, too much stuff could happen. Okay, plastic guns with little rubber darts. Sure, why don't we go with that?
Oh god, it's just
then we throw them out a window.
So bad.
No.
God only knows how old this is, but anyway, I keep going on while I'm looking for this. If I need to, I'll send it on to you. It's so fucking funny, like. But anyway, another couple of tiny ones then as well. Like Eddie Adams' family was already brought up, and then to also keep it in spirit of what we had. Oh, Spirit, actually, the Spirit was in the Spirit. Remember the Spirit?
Yeah, I remember the Spirit. Yeah,
and Alexander the Great. Other than that, like it throws up. It's one of those ones where you see it. I've seen it in cartoons and other things that I can't find because there's hundreds of references for it.
Yeah.
But it like you see it in cartoons. I think it's always the go-to thing when you have an awful lot of shows or whatever like that, spoof things, especially when it's like cuts to a scene of people in a dungeon. Usually somebody's in a rack.
Yeah, I mean, and that latest movie that came out from Broken Lizards, Quasi, which is just horrible. You expect good things from the people who gave you Super Troopers, but the movie is just, it's not good. But it based around Quasimodo, and he created the rack, and he's teaching people how to use it, and, that's another thing I thought, but that's not a very good movie. Back to that Dolph Lundgren thing, I would imagine that somebody would get up to the penthouse and he's there and he's like, you feel like an action star? And they're like, yeah. All right, you want to be the next Sylvester Stallone? They're like, yeah. And he just punches them and puts them in the hospital for 3 days.
The worst thing is, like, he keeps making stupid, like, action movie references and not even ones that he's been in. Like, it's just, it's like he fucking kick somebody out a window where he's I'll be back kind of thing and stuff like that.
he's just like, get to the chopper.
Yeah.
It's like, that doesn't make any sense.
Chopper.
Why would you say it's not a tumor? That's the wrong person. You are not Arnold Schwarzenegger.
My cookies. Who's after getting my cookies? Take the Tower. It's called. It is.
Oh, okay.
So fucking.
Somebody
funny.
runs in. Stop her! My mom will shoot. No.
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay, that's all we got.
Stupid.
Finally covered the big bad of torture, of the torture world. I think it was worth the wait.
That was. My little word of wisdom for you today, Kevin, is never sneeze in a spacesuit. In case you're ever... Yep.
You can't get the mask. I mean, if you're inside, I suppose. But yeah, if you're out in space, don't sneeze in it.
It's actually a really funny thing here now. Speaking of that, so we're big Formula 1 fans here in the house, and we were watching a race there that was on last week, and one of the drivers he's like, oh, it's raining down in whatever turn 8 or whatever. And they're like, oh, we don't see anything in the radar, blah, blah, blah. And next thing there's other people are calling in saying, oh, is there rain down there? And everybody's like, no, it's fine. And the man's like, yeah, just rain coming down. And like, there's no rain, blah, blah, blah. And eventually he realizes it's sweat inside his helmet that's dripping. Oh, God. It's stupid.
Oh, fuck.
I have a little...
Alright.
I'll give you one of these crappy jokes, will I? Because I have to say one of them, because I wrote it down purely to say it to you, because I knew that you'd like it, really. Because it's so bad. This is just cute.
Okay, well, let's end the show with it.
Alright, so...
hold off for just a minute.
Yeah, hold off for as long as you want, trust me.
Yeah.
I can wait 6 months for this if you want.
Tell me your horrible joke. All right, like we said before, this is our 1 year podiversary, and I'd like to take a second to thank some people. First off, Dan, thank you for doing this weird fucking thing with me. It's been a blast. I've enjoyed every fucking second.
I quit.
That would be my fucking luck.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
I'm officially retiring.
So, going out on top, even though we're not on top. Yeah. All of the other podcasts out there that have shown us support, pods that have played our promos on their shows and ones that we've played on here, I'm 100% convinced that a decent number of our regular listeners have found us because of those other shows. And hopefully some of their listeners came from listening to us. So the Private Dicks podcast, World's True Crime, Crime Divers podcast, the Mount Rushmore podcast, Tea Time Crimes, Crime Scenes and Cupcakes, True Crime B&B, Eye for an Eye, Horror House, The Nick of Crime, Cola City Crimes, That's Not Good, a True Crime podcast, if you can see a theme going here, Dark Tales from the Road, Cryptic Soup, Crime Bay, and of course our good friends Deb from The Dying to Be Found and The Dash, and of course Joey and Jimmy from Please Don't Follow Me Home. Ooh, Dan,
thank you all.
Wrote a wonderful song for her.
And it wasn't the rat song.
Thank all of you wonderful people, and of course to the listeners, especially to our Patreon members, Inquisitor Willow, Quinn Fowler, Executioner Shragamani, and or Torture Noob, MX Sinister 26. Thank you so much. If you'd like your name to be shouted out on the show and to get a bunch of extras, go sign up for our Patreon, patreon.com/torturepod. We have 4 tiers to choose from now, and if you're on the fence about whether or not to get a subscription, you can sign up for a free 7-day trial of our Cult Leader tier. Please go follow us on Instagram, all the other social medias at TorturePod. Email us, torturepod@gmail.com. If there's anything you would like for us to cover, or if you have any comments, review Apple, follow, subscribe, whatever service you listen on. Head over to our YouTube page. We got some stuff up on there. If you'd like to donate, you can do that on our link tree. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/torturepod and donate there. Or again, you can always go to our Patreon, patreon.com/torturepod. Buy some merch, redbubble.com/people/torturepod. Yes, the shirt. We have a bunch of stuff over there. I'm trying to come up with new stuff. If any of our listeners have any art they would like to put on a shirt or a hat, send it over to me. I'd be more than happy to throw it up there and make $1 off of your hard work. So our next episode will officially be our season 2 premiere. So we'll be covering something that I have been asked about. You all seem to like the old bloody, gory methods, and oh boy, are you gonna get it. So hint for our next episode, you'll probably never see this in a Thor movie. So.
It's a horror movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Dan, anything what do you want to end us with today?
Yeah, I apologize in advance. I read this and I thought this has to be shared because, So Kevin, tell me, why was Harry Potter crap at flying his broom?
No idea.
Because he couldn't drive stick.
Oh, God damn it.
It's so bad.
Jeez, it's fucking...
I know.
I like the one...
And he got sick. It's like, this has to be shared with Kevin.
Do you know how to find the gym at Hogwarts? You just look for the dumbbell doors.
Nice.
Oh, but dude, my wife loves that fucking joke, by the way. I told her that and she burst out laughing.
You know what's better than Harry Potter? Star Wars.
As he looks directly into the camera. It's so creepy.
Just saying. Star Wars.
All right.
You know, Star Wars. Alien.
Yeah. All right, I told you all it was going to be a little bit longer one. Thanks for sticking with us. Take care of yourselves, take care of one another, and we'll see you.
Auf Wiedersehen.
That's German for toodaloo.
It was the part D. Thank you.